Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us today for our press briefing. We have three speakers here today. We've got Nick Calio, President and CEO of Airlines for America, Lee Moak, who's President of the Airline Pilots Association, and Faye Malarkey Black, who is Senior Vice President of Government Affairs with the Regional Airline Association. So we'll have the three speakers who will speak, and then we'll take Q&A after. We've got reporters both in the room and on the phone. We will alternate between the two. For those on the phone, we will take questions after our third speaker, and if you just press 1 and then 4 to ask a question. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to Nick Calio, President and CEO of Airlines for America.
Thank you, Jean, and thank all of you for being here. I'm sorry we have to be here on a Friday afternoon. In fact, I'm sorry we have to be here at all about this particular issue. But America's airlines, our employees, and the public really have no choice. I also want to thank Lee Moak from the Airline Pilots Association and Faye Malarkey Black from the Regional Airline Association for being here with us and for joining Airlines for America in its lawsuit against the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration, but we'll get to that in a minute. The FAA's so-called capacity reduction plan is illegal, irresponsible, and damaging. Most of all, it's totally unnecessary. After 2 years, almost 2 years after sequestration was put in effect, 9 months after first being asked by members of Congress how it planned to implement sequestration, 7 weeks after sequestration became a reality, and after repeated requests by the airlines for details, the FAA finally briefed the airlines and other stakeholders earlier this week, orally, no written plan, just 5 days before it was announcing furloughs and ground delays. As constructed, the plan has the potential to cause maximum disruption for the public, traveling public, and shipping public. From the beginning, A4A has said that our goal was to protect our passengers and shippers from delays and cancellations. First, we asked the FAA that air traffic controllers be deemed essential personnel, as they always historically have been. We were told that the FAA had no discretion to do so. So we sought independent legal opinions on the question of FAA discretion. Both concluded that the FAA had it. We supplied those opinions to the FAA over 2 months ago. We also asked that the FAA hit the pause button, take a timeout, to put a hold on its plan for a month to give us time to seek a solution, perhaps legislatively. They told us no. We thought the request was perfectly reasonable given that they put a 2-month delay on the tower closures. Secretary LaHood was quoted as saying about the towers, "It's important to get this right." Well, getting the entire national airspace system right is equally important. We've sought and we continue to seek legislation that would provide the specific discretion that, again, we believe the FAA already has to make cuts that will ensure that air traffic controllers are deemed essential. We have been told that the administration will not support any such legislation unless it specifically solves the entire sequestration problem. So we find ourselves left with no choice. We are taking legal action, seeking a stay in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit to halt this ill-conceived plan that's based on false premises and a bad reading of the law. The FAA does have the flexibility in how it implements sequester cuts. It's just choosing to ignore that it does. I know you have questions about what the airlines are doing, but we will be candid. You have been provided by the FAA the same amount of information about these delays as the airlines have. And given that, the very people who are expert at contingency planning, the airlines, can't really plan. We asked for and were refused any explanation of the specifics or the methodology used to reach predictions by the FAA. Again, we weren't given those. However, the methodology transformed somehow a 10% across the board cut into 30 to 40% delays at certain major airports. The math doesn't add up. If it's correct, we will be deliberately delaying, the FAA will be deliberately delaying 1 out of every 3 passengers that flies every day in this country. You know, on the worst delay day in 2012, there were nearly 3,000 delays, mostly due to severe weather. Assuming good weather, the FAA predicts in its models that twice as many delays will come as a result of sequester, up to 6,700 flights a day. The FAA also informed us on Tuesday that it will begin automatic ground stop delay programs regardless of conditions. Regardless of conditions. Putting ground delays in without conditions really is unacceptable. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And here we are, we're 2 days before the ground delays are supposed to begin, the automatic ones, and we still don't have any specifics from the FAA. With crowded flights, passengers may not be able to rebook if they face cancellations or long delays. Canceling flights does not solve the problem. It exacerbates it and frustrates customers and commerce. Unlike Customs, TSA, and other agencies, the FAA has also not acted to minimize potential impacts. On Tuesday, we were informed that the FAA has yet to coordinate its plan with Customs or TSA, which may need to extend their hours if these delays occur, as the FAA has predicted. The FAA plan, again, is simply irresponsible and unnecessary. Savings can be found in other FAA accounts, such as budgets for contractors, employee travel, facilities, equipment, and long-term programs, which would relieve the pressure in the short term to furlough air traffic controllers. If the FAA's predictions are accurate, there's going to be a considerable impact on airlines, our customers, our employees, and the economy. As you all know, such delays over a long period of time would ultimately lead to a reduction in capacity. You simply can't run a schedule or plan for delays, catastrophic delays, every day. Aside from that, the math is pretty simple. Less capacity equals less flights equals less jobs. Another bit of math. The FAA itself says that flight delays cost airlines and their customers $31 billion annually in actual costs and lost productivity. That's $60,000 for every delay minute. Think about the fuel burn. That's during a good year. You can only guess what the delay would cost if we're 5 times over the average delays. Simply put, this doesn't make any sense. So in addition to everything we have been doing and are continuing to do, we're launching a grassroots campaign, Don't Ground America, so passengers, employees, and the public can express the need for Congress and the administration to take action at www.don'tgroundamerica.com. Thank you very much. Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Nick, and good afternoon to everybody. It truly is a sad day that we find ourselves here on a Friday talking about the failure of the administration and Congress to resolve budget issues which now appear to have led to imminent furloughs of frontline safety professionals. And I want to underscore that, frontline safety professionals. As early as this Sunday, April 21st, the FAA will begin to furlough critical frontline safety professionals, including air traffic controllers, air carrier inspectors, facility maintenance crews, and other personnel who are vital to our daily safe operations. Again, I'd like to underscore this. Safety will not be compromised. That's a given. But this will cause serious reductions in the number of flight operations and system capacity. From a pilot's point of view, flight delays in excess of the worst delays of 2012 due to weather conditions, as the FAA has stated, would be a nightmare. Think back to last year's cancellation of more than 20,000 flights as a result of Hurricane Sandy. That event lasted several days in just one area of the country. These furloughs will impact airports coast to coast every single day. We're in constant contact with the FAA and are coordinating with our air traffic control system partners and DOT to monitor the situation. While there will be operational impacts, Every pilot will act professionally and maintain a safe operation by working in close coordination with controllers, flight operations, dispatchers on fuel requirements, weather concerns, availability of our alternate airports, and ultimately, whether a flight can be safely operated at all. At the end of the day, that's the driving issue in the safest airspace in the world. If we can't safely operate the flight, it won't go. ALPA is calling on the administration and Congress to work together to ensure that essential services are maintained during sequestration and that frontline safety personnel are not affected by these budget cuts. This time I'd like to introduce Faye Malarkey Black. She's the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the RAA. Faye?
Thank you, Lee. And thanks, Nick and A4A, for putting this together. What happened to TGIF? I guess now we can just say, thank God it's not Sunday yet. In all seriousness, we are glad to be part of this. Not glad, certainly, because this is, as others have said, very unfortunate. But I just want to stress that this is something, the impacts of this will be felt evenly across the industry and, in fact, across our country. Regional airlines play a critical role in our nation's air transportation system. We operate half the flights. We have 161 million passengers annually, and we employ over 50,000 professionals. We serve 658 airports in the United States. 470 of them rely on us exclusively. That's 3/4 of our nation's airports rely on regional airlines exclusively for their connectivity to the system. Given that, the impact of these cuts on our industry cannot be overstated. If you look at the FAA's list of impacted airports, regional airlines have a presence everywhere. We are not just at the spokes. We've got to serve the hubs in order to serve the spokes and hub to hub at well. We have a considerable hub presence at many of these airports. We're operating 50% of the flights. We have a presence at all of them. In some of them, we are operating the majority of the flights. So again, this will have a very critical impact on us. In addition to the impact at the hubs, we also feel the impact at the spokes. We've talked about the ripple effect of this. This is something that will have an impact at the hubs. It will cause systemic delays and cancellations, and those will be felt everywhere across the system, including the spokes. And we think that there is not one airport in the nation that will be immune to this. Regional airlines collaborate with our code share partners to mitigate delay. In fact, we had come up with a circumspect plan to address the delays and the cuts as the FAA had previously announced, and now that's been turned on its head with the most recent furlough announcement. And so we're stuck trying to mitigate these delays based on a whole new forecast factors. We think that this TRO is going to be very important. We think that the stay will give the FAA some wiggle room to reconsider these indiscriminate cuts, to make more measured and thoughtful cuts, and also to give Congress time to react and intervene. And so once again, we very much appreciate A4A's leadership on this, and we join them in their great concern about the impacts this has on communities large and small. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take questions now, and I'm instructed to remind you that we will do take the first question from the room and then go to the phone, correct?
Bart Jansen from USA Today. It sounds as if you're asking for an injunction. Can you say, do you expect to be able to stop the furloughs before they start, or how do you expect this to play out?
I don't believe, no, we cannot stop the furloughs before they start. We're seeking a stay that's in the United States Court of Appeals under the applicable statutes. That's the place where we have to file.
Do you know how soon you might get a reaction from the court, or what the next step would be?
We're hoping that it will be days before we get a reaction from the court. It could be up to a week, maybe a little longer before we get a hearing.
We do have a question from the phone line, from the line of Jeff Flock with Fox Business. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking my call. Can you say more about how that is played out? Have you actually filed already? And if you have not, when would you do so?
We have already filed.
But based on what you know, you're not expecting, you're not asking for an immediate injunction.
Without trying to get too deeply into the legalities, this is a motion for a stay of the FAA action in the Court of Appeals. Again, under the applicable statutes, that's the place to file this motion. You go to the district court when you want to get a temporary restraining order and injunctive relief. This is a little bit slower process, unfortunately.
But you're calling this, irresponsible, and I'm just wondering if there's not a grounds to speed the process.
We're trying.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Kathy Wolf with Politico. I just want to know if you can give some better idea of what exactly this means. If somebody's flying on Monday, what's the likelihood their flight's going to be canceled?
Want to go first? I'm happy.
So the air system is not set up. Okay, it's not set up that you can say if you have 100 arrivals per hour, let's say into New York or into the New York area or into Atlanta, if it's not set up to be able to recover, if you now say it's only going to have 50 arrivals per hour, if you take the capacity down to that, that means 50 airplanes that have arrived in the area, or they're setting on the ground someplace and we're not allowed to take off until they can make it to the next hour. You don't recover the first 50, you're going to lose 50 in the next hour. And the way the flight systems are set up, the air crew and the passengers who need to go to the next flight, they need to connect. Well, if the connecting airplane never arrived, and the air crew that's supposed to fly a different airplane never arrived, okay, it's going to start a snowball that whereas on Sunday, which is a low flight day starting in the beginning of the day, but by Sunday afternoon, it's starting to pick up, and by Monday, we're into the full schedule. So if those delays take effect, as the FAA has said, it will not be very long before the system comes to a grinding halt, much like you see with a severe weather event. If you wanted to take a visual, it would be like having Hurricane Sandy in the north and Hurricane Katrina in the south at the same time. And you won't be able to recover from that because the system is not set up for that. The air system is not a light switch, okay? Once it starts, it takes days and days to recover. So that's what you could expect if those delays go into place.
I think, Kathy, hopefully those delays will not happen somehow, and that the predictive models that the FAA shared with us will not come into effect. But again, I think the key point here is, based on the specifics we've been given, which are scant, we do not really know enough to make a prediction.
I would just add, and the one thing that differentiates this from weather, although that's a very good comparison, is that unlike weather, which is temporary and you can recover in the next couple of days, this is systemic and ongoing. So it's day in and day out. We expect these delays and cancellations to permeate the system.
I just want to emphasize, I agree with what Nick says. I would hope it doesn't happen, but we've never seen an event like this where they're predicting this type of flow restrictions on a national basis. And the airline industry is connected throughout the entire country and internationally. It's connected. And if there's an effect in the West where they're not arriving in the East, it will quickly grind to a halt. So.
Take a question from the phone.
The next question comes from the line of Jack Nikas with the Wall Street Journal. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, can I first just get who was speaking before Nick on that last question?
Lee Moak from the Airline Pilots Association.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So, given that the emergency stay here at the very least wouldn't be acted upon maybe until several days at the earliest, and given, let's say hypothetically, it was unsuccessful for some reason, What are there any contingency plans, anything that airlines can do to try to mitigate the impact here?
This is Nick. We've been trying to work with the FAA and will continue working with the FAA to try to mitigate impacts in any way that we can. It's important that we do so because we want to protect our customers, obviously. Again, we're going to have to see how it rolls out to determine what it is exactly we can and cannot do. We're very good at contingency planning, but that only goes so far, as Lee pointed out. I think it's important, that hopefully shortly everyone will realize what the stakes are for not only the airlines but for the entire economy. And rather than using aviation and airlines as a political football, the sides can come together to work something out quickly.
This is Faye from the Regional Airline. Just if I could add, the key to successful contingency plans is information, and part of our complaint here is that we lack that information. And so without that firm guidance from the FAA on how these cuts will be carried out, we're really hamstrung in trying to develop these contingency plans, which of course we are working constantly to do.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Lee. I'd just, again, like to add the visual, okay? If you have a weather system that you know is coming, you can plan with extra de-icing fluid. You can move capacity around. You can plan that your disruptions are minimal and that you can recover quickly. But if you don't have any of that information, you can't really plan, and that's what we have right now. We don't know the only thing we know for certain is that next week there's going to be some weather, and we're kind of planning for that. But we don't really know what the FAA is going to do. So.
Andy Compart with Aviation Week. First of all, to follow up on that, can you specify what kind or level of detail do you need from the FAA in order to be able to plan, other than instead of 75 flights an hour, this airport can now handle 60 flights an hour? And then secondly, separate questions, I don't know if I'm going to take it, but for Nick, could you be more specific about where you think the FAA could cut within these programs that you talked about?
You want to go? Okay. What was the first question again?
So what information do you need from FAA specifically beyond this airport will go from 75 flights per hour to 60 flights per hour?
That would be a start, certainly. And if they were to identify airports, say that there's only going to be X number of flights, given good weather, there's only going to be X number of flights in and out on a given day, that would help us start to be able to plan and start to be able to work with our customers to get something done. I think, Lee and Faye may have more to say about that. I mentioned some specific areas of facilities, travel, long-term projects, where I think given the stakes here, they need to look anywhere rather than taking, as Lee put it, frontline essential safety employees that will has the potential to crash the entire system.
That covers it from us. I mean, at this point, I think we would consider a good place to start some information above what we have gotten and go from there.
The next question comes from the line of Joan Lowy with the Associated Press. Please proceed.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. FAA has said over and over again in DOT that they are trying to do everything they can to minimize the impacts to as many passengers as possible, and that they had no choice but to do things this way because of the large number, because they're such an operational heavy an agency where almost all their spending or the bulk of their spending is in employees, many of them safety critical, and so forth. Now they keep saying this over and over again, and you keep saying no, that's not the case, or they could have done something different. So obviously you think there is a different reasoning going on. So I was wondering if you would tell me why you think it is that FAA isn't doing what you think they can do. Or do you think that, go ahead.
Thanks, Joan. First of all, so people on the phone know Lee has the nice voice. Faye has a nice voice too, but you can tell her I'm the guy with the lousy, gravelly voice. Look, we're not sure why the FAA is doing what it's doing. They and DOT clearly do not want to be in the position they are in. They have to make cuts. Our point is the cuts can be made somewhere else. And we've talked over and over again, quite clearly, unsuccessfully. Speculation about motives we will leave to others. And as you know, Joan, there are people speculating on other reasons. And again, I would just say, airlines and aviation and our customers should not be part of a political battle. We provide over $1 trillion a year of economic activity, over 10 million of jobs. If this happens, we are going to crater the entire system. And that means a lot of different things. It means people, passengers, customers who have booked flights 6 months in advance for their summer vacation with their kids may not be able to get that flight and might not be able to rebook. Someone, a small business that needs parts coming from overseas to manufacture a product that it is then going to ship overseas might not be able to get those parts. The economic impact is so severe, so kind of everybody needs to get together on this, not try to solve larger problems all at once. Focus on a problem that has the biggest impact, potential impact of any part of sequestration.
So if I can follow up then, are you saying that when FAA, when Huerta and LaHood sit there and say, we've done everything we can, we have to minimize the impacts, we have to do it this way, that they're simply not telling the truth?
Let me add. Hey, Joan, this is Lee Moak. I just want to add, and then we could get to your second question. You know, in fact, you're very familiar with this, as is everyone else in the room. A couple of years ago, the FAA had a lapse in funding due to a lack of coordination within the Congress at that time. And so we really shouldn't get into a discussion perhaps on who should be furloughed. We should focus on who should not be furloughed. Okay, air traffic controllers should not be furloughed. The operational integrity of the system should be maintained as it was maintained during that lapse of funding 2 years ago. That's what we're saying. And as far as I'll let Nick speak on Secretary LaHood, if you'd like.
Joan, I would never say that.
Okay.
Any questions left in the room? No, we've got one more on the call. Yeah.
We have a question from the line of Matt Walt with the New York Times.
Thank you. I'd like to ask anybody who'd like to answer why you're filing suit now. The FAA said 2 months ago it was going to reduce controller hours by 10%. Were you counting on Congress to end the furlough? Were you counting on something else to happen? Is the analysis that they called you in for on Tuesday really a surprise?
Number one, I say it's almost like, are you kidding? Why did we wait? Because we work with the FAA all the time. We have been working with them. We've had a lot of meetings, but we've gotten no details and no plans. Tuesday was the first time we got anything, and frankly, it doesn't do the job. It's really no plan at all. They gave us a plan on paper, on deck, or not a plan. I'm doing it a favor by calling it that. In the middle of the meeting, they asked for it back because they said it had been cleared after somebody in the room had been emailed. We asked for more details. We thought the numbers didn't quite jibe, so we asked if they could give us the data upon which that they used to make their analysis so we could see what the methodology was, and we were told we couldn't have it. So, you know, we waited, we continued, we started exploring our legal options immediately afterwards, and we filed today. Yes, please.
I'm lost. If they said 2 months ago they were going to lay off 10% of the controllers, what on earth did you think was going to happen?
We thought that they might apply it. Well, first of all, as I've said repeatedly, we believed, argued, and made the case that air traffic controllers should not be furloughed because they are and always have been, in any other circumstance in history, been deemed essential employees. There's a lot of other people who could be furloughed. Because of their importance to the system, we thought the controllers should be left alone. We hoped they would be left alone, and we believed that at the end of the day, the FAA would find a different way to institute or to meet its targets.
Okay, thank you.
I'd add one thing. You know,
Yeah.
to cut to the chase here, they're using the air system, as a political football. The bottom line, we figured people of reasonable people could work this out ahead of time. Well, ahead of time this week, we found out is now Sunday, and they weren't able to do it. And so now they are going to be furloughed, and now the system is going to be affected, period. And so flights will be delayed. Ultimately, flights will be canceled. That's where we find ourselves. That's what we need to stop.
This is Faye from RA. I would add one last thing. All along, we've been meeting with the FAA in good faith and taking their word for it that they were implementing these cuts in a way that would impact the fewest number of travelers. And so that's what we did. That's how we were trying to adjust and mitigate moving forward. And now there's been what appears to us, from our perspective, a sea change in that. This does not, what they have given us, the paper they have given us, does not do that. It doesn't mitigate the impacts. It doesn't make the impacts affect the fewest number of travelers possible. So it's created an emergency situation for us as we face this, and we feel we really have no choice but to join this suit.
Just to clarify, when you say they are using this as a political football, can you just identify the they?
Well, I think, I believe it's obvious, but if you want to get right to the point, air traffic controllers should not be furloughed, period. There is still money at the FAA to pay air traffic controllers. So whoever is making that decision in the administration, they are using this as a political football. And for the other question that we heard just a moment ago, I think we should stress that when people were reporting this story over the last couple of months, I think many people were still booking vacations next week because we thought, we were confident that we wouldn't be furloughing air traffic controller safety professionals and that we were going to protect the operational integrity of the national air system.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all for coming. We can follow up with me or my team if you have additional questions. And again, we urge you to visit www.don'tgroundamerica.com. Thanks for coming.